Welcome to Never Enough Time. Today we are doing something a little different. One, we're inside. Typically, if you're new to the channel, I like being outside. Not because there's any particular reason other than I really enjoy being outside doing these videos and reviews. But the other thing that we're doing a little different today is we're doing our first vintage watch review. And vintage watches are kind of a tricky area to do watch reviews on from my perspective. One is the general availability, two is the general approachability, and three is quality. And all three of those things can be difficult depending on your level of interest and even, what your budget is or your level of expertise in trying to suss out if a vintage watch is a good purchase or is right for you.
Across the river there's a woman I know. Sometimes I go there and I knock on her door. I said, baby, 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 let's waste some time.
We're looking at the Cordura Seagull today. And this is a watch that, as of December 2020, if you hop out to eBay, you'll see over 20 listings for this particular watch. So its availability is there. Its approachability is going to be sub $500. So, this channel's done a lot of watch reviews in the sub 1,000 range. So this also fits that. And the quality of these is going to be all over the board when you're talking about a watch that's at least 50 years old, in that ballpark. So it has all the touch points of what can make vintage watch buying, I think, interesting, and why it's interesting to me. So let's actually break this watch down a little bit and see, if it's a watch you might be interested in. So this is one of the things that drew me to the watch is the dimensions. When we are talking vintage watches, they just were smaller. My grandfather's watch, which I might do a review on at some point, I think is like 32 millimeters. So, men wearing watches that were 32, 34, 36 was commonplace. And those are watch sizes that, for my 8-inch wrist, I just have a hard time wearing, just from a visual standpoint and from a usability standpoint. So when I came across this watch, and it was 42 millimeters, so you have a watch that's more modern in its proportions. So 42 millimeter case, 44 out to the crown. You have a 44, almost 45 millimeter lug to lug. You have, it's 14 mil thick. That's a little bit deceiving because that's from the very bottom of the case all the way to the top of a very large boxed sapphire. Trying to get that right on the camera can be tricky, but you have at least 2 millimeters there of just the acrylic crystal. So wearable watch in terms of modern proportions and modern size. I'll roll in some pictures of it on my 8-inch wrist and also on my wife's 6.5-inch wrist. And because of the compact lug to lug, it actually wears well for both of us. The 42 gives me a little more presence to be able to read the dial, and the 45 lug to lug makes it easier to wear on smaller wrists. So that really what drew me to this watch in the first place. Second, the acrylic crystal is, I think, too easily discarded or maligned with today's modern watchmaking. Yes, it can scratch, and when you buy vintage watches with acrylic crystal, some of them are really scratched to heck, and that requires either a changing of the crystal or a lot of polywatch and patience, right? But the acrylic crystal really gives you some very nice. The acrylic crystal really gives you nice looks at the dial, especially out in sunlight. And I'll roll in some footage of that. But you get some nice distortions when you look at the boxed, edges of it. And you don't get that high sort of glare, even with anti-reflective coating on sapphire crystal. Sometimes in direct sunlight, you get a lot of reflection. With the acrylic crystal, you don't. And so I like acrylic crystals, and there are some modern watches, micro brands that are using acrylic. I mean, I think Laurier uses some acrylic crystals on their watches, and there's a few others. So I kind of like that. I think a Certina model I reviewed also had an acrylic crystal, their Certina Diver, if I'm recalling correctly. But back to this watch here. This watch, 1968 to about 1974, I think is what I could research on this. But you have a Swiss-made, it was a Baumgartner 158. And what's interesting about that movement, at least from my research of it, I am not a movement expert. So this is just off of research. I'll put some links in the description if you're interested in reading about this movement as well. But it's a pin pallet escapement. And typical levers, escapement levers, used horizontal and hardened, I'm not probably going to use it, teeth or prongs to grab the balance wheel. And those were considered, durable and tough. You're using harder materials on that. The pin lever escapement or pin pallet escapement used vertical stainless steel pins, or stainless, I don't know, vertical steel pins. And so instead of being horizontally engaging, it was vertically engaging. And that did a couple things. One, it made the manufacturing of that movement far less expensive. It had the downside of wearing a little bit more, to the point where, at least from what I read, when pin pallet movements needed repair, they typically didn't repair, and the movements were just cheap enough. You could just chuck the movement and get a new one. So interesting movement and interesting history, which, like I said, I'll put a link to some of that. In terms of how you interact with the movement, that's also a little bit different. When you pull it all the way out, it does not hack. It does hand wind. In position, it'll simply wind, pulling it out to do the date wheel. Now, to change the day, you actually have to go 24 hours around. So the day does not quick set. And I should have had it set closer, but when I get it out to the day switching, okay, if we're going for Monday there, and then the date will flip over with it. Now to set the date, its quick set is half hour back and forth. See it advanced, I go forward, I go back, and it will advance forward and back. And so it had a quick set date by going half hour movements back and forth. Kind of quirky, kind of neat. And as an aside, this is one reason why I have been very interested in pursuing vintage watches over the last few years. You get some very unique movements that you can look up and research, different ways that watchmakers were trying to be innovative and creative with their movements. And so in pursuing vintage watches, it has been interesting to me to get some of these unique different ways watchmakers were approaching some movement building. So this watch then, other features of it, you have in traditional 70s style, and this is where a lot of my vintage watch collecting occurs. I love the funkiness of the 70s. You have a blue, almost purple, get the focus, there we go, almost a blue purple sunburst. And if I'm not catching it well here, I will actually roll in some outdoor footage as well. But you get, in normal light, it looks blue. As it plays with the light, you get a very purplish tint. You have yellow hands for the hour and minute. You have a second hand with a red tip. So a lot of your standard sort of 70 color funkiness, even the day date wheel, you have a white day and a yellow date. The minute track on the outside is white, and you also have the military time running as well, almost field watch like in that. And then its bezel is a bi-directional friction bezel. And what I typically do is just take my fingernail and spin it. So if I'm using it to time something, which is usually in the kitchen cooking, I will grab and spin it that way. So a lot of visual interest in this watch. I really enjoy wearing this watch. Now, so it's a little bit tricky sometimes to find a strong running vintage watch, especially in the price tier that I pursue vintage watches. This one, I do what I do with a lot of vintage watches that I don't spend a lot of money on. I take them apart. I try to learn about it. I tinker with them a bit. And I actually self-regulated this one. And I'll roll in some footage on the time grapher that's behind me. I'm within 15 seconds a day and a pretty low beat error too. In fact, better than some of the micro brand watches I bought brand new. I have this running better. So that adds to the enjoyment to me. I actually wear this sometimes as my daily wear. I'll wear it every day for a couple of weeks. Water resistance on vintage watches, pain in the butt, right? I don't even try the water resistant stuff. So I don't wear it in the shower. I don't wear it doing dishes. I don't worry about a splash of water or a drop of rain or something. But I don't treat this watch like I treat, say, the watch I'm wearing today, Glycine DC4 Purist. So that is one of the drawbacks, if you will, of wearing a vintage watch. So that's the Cordura Seagull, as far as I know it. A watch that's available, like I said, just on eBay. I did a quick look before I started the video. There was over 20 of these, and they ranged from $100 up to, I think, a couple new old stock ones on there for like $400 or $450 or best offer. So you can even get some new old stock on there as well. Now, I'm going to cut it off there. I hope you enjoyed this. I have quite a few vintage watches to do. It's not going to be a vintage watch channel. I enjoy the journey I'm on with improving my knowledge and interest in good value for money watches. And value for money could be, up to 100,000. This channel isn't ready for the deep end of the pool. We're really grinding through your common man everyday watches that you can buy, you can have confidence in, you can wear for a long time, that are tough, that offer you good value for the capital that you're parting with. So if you like this video, please watch, subscribe, share. I love interacting in the comment section with all of you on these watches that I do. I'm having a lot of fun, and that's what watch collecting is. It's just a ton of fun for me, and I'm trying to be a data point for you. So until next time, I hope you have a great set of days. God bless, and we'll see you with another video soon.